Hello, fellow Americans. This is Cathi Chamberlain, otherwise known as the deplorable author of the book Rules for Deplorables, a primer for fighting radical socialism. You're about to view a video of a presentation I recently made to a group of patriots just like you. If you like what you see, drop on by my website where you can order the book. It comes in ebook, audiobook, and also the paperback. That would be www.rulesfordeplorablesbook.com. Thank you so much for your support, and may God bless America.
Cathi Chamberlain has an interesting background. She graduated from California State University at Rutledge. She's volunteered for numerous volunteer organizations, including the Guardian Ad Litem program and Metropolitan Ministries. She's an author, and one of the things she's going to be talking about tonight is her book, which I won't steal any of her thunder on that. She's also a licensed building contractor, and the interesting thing about that was she was the owner of the first all-female construction company here in the United States. So, give her a big hand for that. And please.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Escaped California?
I what? Escaped California? You going to about me, I see.
Well, you just said that you were.
Oh, from Cal State. Yeah, you had some facts in there that I didn't even know people knew. So you did your research. Thank you for that. And thank you all for having me tonight. I'm really, really excited to be here. And what's really special is that I see familiar faces. Because I mean, so many new people going around on what I'm calling the Florida Deplorable Book Tour. Doreen, I've known for 10 years. She can deny it or not. Anyway, I'd like to give you a little bit of a background, a little more than Ray did, just to give you an idea of how I came about from being a licensed building contractor here in the state of Florida to writing a book about deplorables. Kind of a stretch. But I do have a pretty good reason. So I was brought up in a very conservative family. My dad was in the military. He retired as a lieutenant colonel. And we grew up pretty much in the Washington, D.C. area. And I was the middle child. So as you can imagine, I rebelled. And I ended up leaving home when I was 17 years old and ended up in California for the next 15 years. It was there that I got really indoctrinated and became quite the liberal. So I haven't always been on your side. But I mean, I got so involved in all the causes of the liberals, and so I have a really interesting perspective, and now especially from this side looking to that side, it's kind of interesting how they got me. And I did graduate from Cal State Northridge, which back then it was a pretty decent school and allowed for varying opinions. Today, forget about it. It's just gone so far wild, I'm afraid to even tell people I'm from there, that I graduated there. But around 1992 is when I kind of started shifting back to the right. I didn't come all the way, but can anybody guess why in 1992 I would have started thinking about coming back to my roots? Any idea?
Ronnie?
Who?
Bill Clinton?
Close. I just fell in love with a man named Ross Perot.
Age rolls.
And I joined his, I was a volunteer on his campaign committee. I mean, I just loved him so much. So that got me to changing from a Democrat to an independent, which I remained for the next, well, yeah, probably 2 decades. And I moved here to Florida in 1995, shortly after the Northridge earthquake destroyed my home and my business. And so I've been here about 25 years, living in St. Pete. And then I finally moved all the way to the right. Can anybody guess when I might have made that decision?
Barack Obama?
Well, he helped, believe me. Yes, I wanted to vote for our fantastic president, Donald J. Trump, in the primary. And absolutely, give him a hand because, thank God, today, if God didn't have a hand in it actually, because 2 years ago, I was out inspecting roofs after Hurricane Irma hit, and I was 10 feet up in my ladder, and all of a sudden my ladder went to the left and I went back and landed on a concrete slab, and I was airlifted to a trauma center. I broke my back in 2 places. I broke both my wrists, and it changed my entire life. At 62 years old, everything done. Doctor said no more power tools. I went, what? Don't take my power tools away, please. And no more climbing ladders. It was devastating. My whole life just switched off. And I sat in the hospital for about 3 months. My sisters took shifts. I have 2 sisters, they took shifts. And so after 3 months in the hospital, I was released, and it took me about 1.5 years to really recover. I went through a lot of therapy, and I still have problems from that, but it's okay. I'm so thankful, because I could be paralyzed, I could be dead from the injuries that I had. So I'm really excited about where I stand before you today, because I never thought in a million years I'd be standing in front of a group of Republicans or anybody, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. I hope to reach the moderates eventually. Right now I'm kind of testing my message out on friends. But in that 1.5 years, there came a time when I started thinking to myself, gee, you know, I remember reading a book when I was a liberal called Rules for Radicals. How many in here have heard of that book first? Okay, so yeah, we're in a group where most of the time, you can imagine if I'm talking to people, they've never heard of it. We all know that, right? How many of you have actually read the book? Okay, now we're coming down a little bit, right? Exactly. Now, how many of you have heard of Richard Ploward and Francis Fox Piven? I knew you would, Doreen. Okay, so a lot of people have written about Saul Alinsky. He wrote a book, this one in fact, Rules for Radicals, back in the 1970s, early 70s. And in his book, he wrote about 13 tactics, 13 tactics for the left to use against conservatives as a way to transform our country into what?
Socialism.
Yes. And they're ahead of us by about 5 decades, really ahead of us. And that's a scary thought. They've infiltrated our schools, they've infiltrated our media, they've infiltrated our entertainment industries. The Democrats were not always their partners, but they joined them somewhere around in the 70s, because they realized through the Ploward-Piven is how Richard Ploward and Francis Fox Piven, they're actually a couple, a married couple. He's dead now, but she's still alive. And they were a sociologist professors at Columbia University. Very left-wing, as you can imagine. I mean, back then, it wasn't as left-wing as it is now, but it was already starting. And they wrote a series of strategy papers. In 1966, they wrote a paper called The Weight of the Poor, a strategy for eliminating poverty, is what it was all about. And it was how they could overwhelm our welfare systems to a point that they could create an annual income guaranteed to every American in our country. That started 5 decades ago, y'all. And what are they talking about that now, the Democratic Socialists? Guaranteed annual incomes. So they've been working towards this for a very long time. We are one election away, in my opinion, from becoming a socialist country. That's why I've taken it upon myself to have this mission. I'm on a mission to do whatever I can to help our president stop that from happening, because I know how close we are. What I've done in my book, I've taken every one of Alinsky's tactics And I devoted one chapter to each one. And I flush out his tactic. I explain it. I tell you how they work it against us. I tell you how we can use it against them. I tell you how to recognize how Trump uses them. Trump knows every one of these tactics, I guarantee you. Have I asked him? Have I talked to him? Has he told me? No. But I can see because I know the tactics. And I can see when he uses them. And you know, every time he uses one, you know what people say about him? He's so unpresidential. And that kills me when I hear that. No, he is not. Who cares anyway? We're almost at our deathbed here with socialism. But when I hear somebody say that he's being unpresidential, and if you hear it, and if you're one to say it, by the way, every time you say that, you're taking ammo, you're giving ammo, I should say, to the left. And you're weakening our president. Because there is nothing unpresidential about him. We have had unpresidential. Guess what that looked like? That got us where we are today. We've seen kinder, gentler. We've seen more compassionate. Where are we today? We have got to stand behind our president no matter what. I don't care if he does call Omarosa dog face. The thing is though, when you consider what she did to him, I mean, I'm glad he fights back.
Yeah, me too.
I am so glad he fights back. My sister got me this pen to sign autographs.
Well, who is your favorite Democrat?
Well, I voted for Jimmy Carter. Am I sorry about that? Yes.
My favorite Democrat is Mitt Romney.
I will agree with you there. Absolutely.
Jimmy Carter's
Yes.
who made me a
Pierre
Republican.
Delecto.
Murkowski.
So I'll give you an example of what one of my chapters looks like. Remember back when Kavanaugh was being just creamed in his fight?
Sacrifice.
Well, that's when I was in a recovery mode, and I was writing chapter 4 when that was going on. So it's in real time in my book. And I just happened to write chapter 4 because Kavanaugh, or about Kavanaugh, because that happened to be the news of the day. All my chapters go on current events. I have over 400 footnotes in my book. It's very well researched. I haven't had one person yet come back to me and say, you were wrong. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, because I don't know. I just haven't heard it yet. The left hasn't seen it yet. I'm sure when they get hold of it. I'm just waiting for that. But chapter 4 goes with Alinsky tactic number 4. Tactic number 4 is make the enemy live up to his own book of rules. So what did they do to Kavanaugh? They took a man who was almost near ideal American male. It was somebody you'd want your daughter to bring home. He's somebody you'd want your son to be like. And they just excoriated the man. And they threw everything at him. Because they knew his book of rules was so high, right, that nobody could live up to that. And so by them throwing that he tried to rape somebody, that he was a drunk, that he did this, that he did that, okay, they were bringing him down to a level that he could be criticized.
No, that was the second time they used that tactic.
Oh, they've used
They
that.
used
a lot
it
more.
on Judge Roy Moore just 3 or 4 months
That is
before
true
that.
in Alabama.
And it was successful, that's why.
That's right. That is exactly right.
Well, they did it on Clarence Thomas too.
Yeah, right. But they've been using it for decades. But we don't recognize the tactics, so we don't understand what's going on. And our leaders, they don't speak up. Why? Because of tactic number 5. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Right? So what happens is, as soon as somebody speaks up and says, gee, I don't agree with what you're doing to Kavanaugh. What do? You racist, you xenophobe, you homophobe, and then what's the best one? You deplorable. I'm thanking Hillary to this day for giving me the title for my book. But that's how they use those tactics. What I want to focus on tonight, and I heard some of you talking about this, which is of course the talk of the day, is the impeachment and what's going on with that. Because what they're using right now, and what they've actually been using since Trump stepped foot into the White House, is tactic number 13. I'll have him take that out of the video. So, like, can you cut that part? No. So tactic number 13 is very interesting because they've been using this against our president, again, since he stepped into the White House. And it is polarize, pick a target first, then you freeze it when you pick the target, obviously that's Trump, right? Then you freeze it, so you just keep coming at him with more and more stuff. And then you personalize it, and what Alinsky says in his book is that you make the enemy look like the devil. You make him look so bad and so ugly and so obscene. What have they done to Trump? I mean, every time he turns around, it's something that they don't like about him. But Alinsky also says, and do it over dramatized. You don't want to just say, oh, he's obscene. You want to say, he is disgusting, he's obscene. I mean, this is how Alinsky teaches them. They have to go overboard on their adjectives, and they do. And our side doesn't say, wait a second. They don't stick up for him because they're afraid of being the next target that's going to be polarized and personalized and attacked. That's where we have to change our MO. We have to do that. In Kavanaugh's chapter, I call that white men can't judge. Okay, then I have one, you would really love this chapter, chapter number 8. The Alinsky tactic is keep the pressure on. I call my chapter trick or tweet. And it's all about Trump's tweets. And when people say to you he should not tweet, you stick up for him. You stick up for him and say he needs to keep tweeting as long and as hard as he wants. Because that's the only way we're getting the truth, folks. Right? That's the only
Without
way.
the media being the buffer.
Yes.
That's what they want to be. They want to be the buffer. And he goes right past them.
Yes, he does.
And in the meantime, he backhands them in the next week.
Exactly. Yeah. I just love it. He knows what he's doing, and and every move he makes, it might look to an untrained eye as though, oh my gosh, what did he just do now?
For a reason.
He knows exactly how what he did just now is going to end up in a month from now. Take the Syrian, pulling out of Syria. Lindsey Graham, what did he do? He came right out and threw the president under the bus. What is the point of that? We can say nothing, that's fine. We don't have to lie. I'm not saying we lie. I'm not saying we become like the left. But why say anything if it's against our own people? This is crazy. This is what the left lives for. This is when they grab something and they send it over to the media, their comrades, and then it gets all blown out of proportion.
The guy that was attacking, not really a Republican.
It's true.
Well, Trump was just testing his loyalties.
That is very true too.
There's something behind everything.
Exactly. And I do love that about him too. So everything he does is for a purpose. I don't know how many of you are adherents to InfoWars. Okay, now that's one of those things that if you say you believe in InfoWars, the left or the conservatives or whoever, the ones that just don't believe in, they just can't see outside the box, they're going to come at you and they're going to say, oh, that's a bunch of conspiracy theories. Yeah. Just like, remember when Hillary Clinton called the right wing a bunch of lunatics back when the whole Monica Lewinsky thing was going on. Remember that? And she said, that's just a right-wing conspiracy. Well, InfoWars just came out today with, I guarantee you it's about ready to explode. Yeah. Did anybody see that? No. They came out with it. It had to do with the whole Burisma thing. Well, it has come out now that the PM, Prime Minister, or it said PM, but I'm guessing that's going to be like our AG. I have a feeling it's their prosecutor, but where he just announced that they have been investigating Burisma, and they just came out with the fact that something like $6 billion has been funneled through a lot of nefarious higher-ups in the Ukraine that are about ready to be arrested, and funneled it right through Burisma and Hunter Biden. It'll be very interesting to see how that. It's interesting that it came out on the same day that these folks, the ones Sunlen and the other guy, I can't remember now who the other guy is. It's just a nightmare. You know what? By the way, Alinsky's, before I forget, his tactic number 8 is keep the pressure on, and this is what you see day in and day out with the left. With them coming after Trump, one thing after another. That's why I went right from the Russia collusion delusion, which I have a chapter in my book about that. And it goes, as soon as they realize they failed at one, they use the exact same tactics, the exact same strategy to develop a whole new one. So be looking for that to come out. A chapter that is one of my favorites, and this is the last chapter I'll kind of talk about, but is chapter 2, and the reason it's one of my favorites is because it is my passion to do whatever I possibly can to stop our country from turning into socialism. And I see it as a real threat to us, because I did a lot of research for my book, and that got me even more worried about it from the stuff that I have in chapter 2. But chapter 2 is all about Venezuela, and it's all about AOC. And it kind of combines the two, her way of thought and what she thinks we can turn into and what we really could turn into. Venezuela, folks, and this has to do with the Second Amendment specifically. Venezuela, the folks there voted in a guy just like Bernie Sanders back in '99. Okay, we all know it was Hugo Chavez. But here's the kicker that I didn't know until I started doing all my research. Hugo Chavez, within 12 years, it was within like 5 years, he knew he wanted to change all the laws. You know how the left today talks about liberalizing our Supreme Court? This is how they did it, and that's why you hear the left saying we need to maybe throw a bunch of more liberals on the Supreme Court. Just add on to our, no more 9, let's go to 20, you hear that? That's what happened in Venezuela. I didn't know that. So Hugo Chavez just threw a whole bunch of liberals on their Supreme Court, and right away, one of the first laws they passed, or took away, I should say, was their Second Amendment. They lost their ability to have guns. Now, I own 4 guns. I'm sure most people in here are gun owners. I can guarantee you every single one of us has caught ourselves saying at one time or another, they're not getting my gun. How many people have said that? Right? Let me tell you how they did it. This is going to blow your mind. It did mine, at least. They stormed these folks' homes that wouldn't give up their guns, just like they did to Roger Stone's home.
Yep.
Okay? Then they threw them in jail. Then they told them that they were facing 20 years in hard prison. That was their penalty for owning a gun and not giving it up. 20 years. Now, let me ask who would raise their hand, who would give up 20 years of their life to hold on to their guns. Yeah. That becomes a little more difficult, okay? And then to see it in real action, I'd like to be a fly on that wall. Not to say you wouldn't, but a lot of people would fold. Well, but you agree with me, a lot of people would fold. That's why we can't let it get that far, folks. So I'd love it if you buy my book. I'd love it if you pass it around, if you spread the message. I am not working, so somebody finally talked me into doing a donation. This is very hard for me. I come from a 6-figure income before I lost everything, pretty much. So to ask for money is not an easy thing for me. But if you like my message, if you'd like to see me keep spreading it around, I've already been contacted by Georgia, I've been contacted by North Carolina, and I've been contacted by Virginia to come speak to their groups. There's no way I can, not for free. You know, I've told them, look, you get the thing going. I'd love to. Right now I'm focused on Florida because here is where Trump is going to win it or lose it. But spread my message around, please. One of the very few ways I have of earning some income is to sell my book. So if you know of any other groups that are looking for a speaker, that helps me get my message out, and it helps me stay alive. Okay, you can reach me. I have a group also. I formed a group on my Facebook page, Rules for Deplorables book. Rules for Deplorables group. And we're closed. I vet personally. We're up to about 650 members. I do not let any snowflakes in, so don't tell your snowflakey friends, because I'll catch them. And you can look, my books go for $25 each here, autographed. They're about, I think, $18.99 on Amazon. You can get them on Amazon. I take cash or credit card here. I also have ebook. I've done all of this on my own. By the way, from a contractor to figure out how to get an ebook, how to get, an audio book. And just a real quick thing, if I have one more second to say something, Ray, this is the coolest story in the whole wide world. this is my favorite. I was over at one of the Trump rallies in Tampa. This was months ago. I was in the midst of doing my audiobook. I did it on my own because I couldn't afford a narrator, right? And I went to this Tampa rally, and I'm talking to the chairman of the Hillsborough fellow there, Colonel James Warshak. How many of you all know him? Okay, well, so I'm talking to him. I gave him my card. I gave him a copy of my book because he's the head of the Hillsborough, I can't lie. And next day, I am doing my narration. I just happened to be on chapter 9, which is Unmasking the Boogeyman, and it's all about Obama when he opened up the 17 intel agencies and started unmasking the spying on Americans. Anyway, so I'm narrating it into I recorded it on my phone, believe it or not, but it came out pretty good. You can go to my website and listen to the prologue in my voice as the audiobook for free to get an idea what the book's about, but you know more now than the prologue's about, I think. But anyway, so I'm reading this one quote, and I'll never forget it, on page 174 of my book. It says, and according to 30-year intel officer that worked for General Flynn in the White House, Colonel James Warshak, and I'm like, what? I said, this name sounds so familiar. And I run and I get the business cards that I collected from the night before, and sure enough, it's Colonel Warshak. So I emailed him, I said, you're not gonna believe this, I met you last night and I quoted you in my book. So now he gives me, every time I see him, he gives me a stack of his business cards, so that it's kind of cute. So I put one of them, only when I sell to a veteran, I put one in page 174 of my book. That's one of my favorite stories in writing this book. So thank you all for having me. If anyone has questions, I love questions.
You can purchase your own copy of Rules for Deplorables, a primer for fighting radical socialism, by visiting Cathi Chamberlain's website at rulesfordeplorablesbook.com or go to amazon.com. It's the best way to prepare for what will be a hard-fought victory in 2020. Vote 2020, Trump or socialism.